But that being said, I do see that there's a couple of questions already in the box, so we'll go ahead and address those, and hopefully that'll prompt additional questions. If you don't know how to ask a question here in the GoToWebinar toolbar, what you need to do is there should be a little orange arrow in the top right corner of your screen. When you click on that, it's going to open up the GoToMeeting toolbar, and you'll see that there's a questions area down towards the bottom. Open up that questions area, and you'll see there's an area where you can type in your questions, and I'll be monitoring that screen on. I'll be monitoring that window on my other screen. So as those come in, I will do my best to answer your questions. So to begin, we do have a question from Harlow. He says, if the originator has an iPad, can the originator make changes on the iPad and have it work like Edge Live? So kind of a two-part question there. And to answer the question, Edge Live does work on the iPad, but you can't actually change the presentation on the iPad. Let me show you what I mean. So I have a sample TCA right here, and I'm going to go ahead and generate a link for it. And I'm actually going to send this to my iPad. So let me pull up my iPad real quick here. So let's see here. All right, so there's my iPad coming into view for you. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the Mortgage Coach app. And you can see here that my link is that 16, looks like an L8JL. So I'm going to type that over here on my iPad. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's see if I got that right. All right, there we go. So now when you're viewing the presentation on the iPad, you can actually navigate the screens by clicking on summary, you can click on payments, all that kind of good stuff. But the question really is, does Edge Live operate on the iPad as well? And the answer is yes. When you're running Edge Live from Edge, you'll hit Edge Live here in your in the same window where you generated the link. And this is going to open up a version of the presentation that allows you to highlight and click, pop out more infos and such. So now let's go back to Reflector, and I'll show you what happens on the iPad. So I've got this presentation open on my iPad, and if I'm inside Edge making changes, say for instance I want to pop out a more info section. Let's get to a more info. When you click on more info, you'll see that the iPad automatically operates to the same area you're on. So if you choose to go to the payment breakdown, for instance, it'll take you over to payment breakdown. And if you choose to highlight certain areas, so I know that this is a little bit wonky. Let me try and see if I can reduce the size of this screen just a tad. There we go. Now you guys can see it in real time. So if I wanted to highlight something like the price, I can highlight on this end, and it's going to highlight on my iPad. So you can see that it already did that for me. If I close out of this area and go to a different area, you can see the iPad operates with me. So Edge Live does function on the iPad, but if I'm on my iPad, I can't just click on one of these figures on the iPad and make changes to it. I have to make the changes from within Edge. Now this means that when you're in Edge Live, when you do your highlighting, when you do your pop-outs, it is going to reflect over on the iPad version here. Now, additionally, if you do want to change figures, you can still do that, but it all has to be done from within Edge. So you would go back into your presentation, and let's say that my conventional 5% down, I wanted to change my interest rate to 4.75. I can do that, and then as soon as I hit a right arrow or a left arrow inside Edge, this is going to trigger a save. Now that gets saved to the database so that now not only does my presentation here, and you can see it just changed over to 4.75, when I highlight that figure, I'm actually going to go into more info here, and you can see that it is highlighted over here in the 5% down. So it does adjust with you live, and as you move across the screens, it's going to move across the iPad. So you can drive this presentation on an iPad. Now, if the question is, can I use my iPad to actually present this and make changes from the iPad without a computer? The answer is no. The iPad is a viewer only, so it's going to view whatever you've got inside Edge, meaning you can make your changes inside Edge, you can make your updates to highlighting and pop-outs, and it's going to happen on the iPad. But just keep in mind, if you're presenting this on your iPad, you've only brought your iPad to a realtor's office or something like that, you're basically just showing them the output of the presentation. You won't be able to make changes to the physical report unless you were to go back inside Edge itself through a browser. Now, that said, there's a lot of questions that come through asking, how would I actually go ahead and edit an Edge presentation from my iPad? Now, you guys are probably aware, if you have an iPad, that there's certain programs you can't run on your iPad because they're Flash-based programs. Edge is a Flash-based program, so you can't just go into a browser, open up Edge on your iPad. That said, there are browsers out there that do have Flash capabilities enabled that you can download on your iPad so that you can do this. Now, the one I recommend is called Puffin. That's Puffin. And it's got Flash already built into it. They do offer a free trial, and then after the free trial, they require you to purchase it. I think it's like $3 or something like that. But well worth it if you actually want to be able to make changes to your presentations in real time on the iPad. You want to actually be able to log into Edge and make changes. You would need a browser that can support Flash. So give it a shot. You know, they have the free trial. Download Puffin, and you'll see that it opens up a browser for you and that you can actually log into Edge. It has its own keyboard and everything inside that browser so that you can type in your login name and your password. And you can actually navigate the screens almost exactly as if you were on the computer. So well worth giving a shot. So Harlow, let me know how that works out for you. Try downloading Puffin on your iPad, and then try accessing Edge. I think you'll like the experience. All right, so with that said, let me go ahead and reduce out of my iPad here, and we'll get back over to Edge. All right, so the presentation I have open is actually kind of a good one just to show you some basics in Edge. What I've done is I actually created a sample total cost analysis. And as you can see from my products here, I've got a 30 fixed FHA and a conventional 5% down. Now, the FHA versus conventional tends to be one of the more common presentations that people end up doing. And of course, the reason for it is, you know, everybody knows that they're going to be able to qualify for an FHA. But what if they can also qualify for a 5% down conventional with slightly less MI? So it's a great presentation to be able to show them, especially since conventional loans don't require MI to be carried through the life of the loan like FHAs do. So I'm going to show you how to put this basic one together, and then hopefully that'll spur some more questions. I actually don't see any more in the box right now, so if you do have questions about this, please go ahead and type them in. I will address them as soon as I see them. So let me explain just a little bit about the top section here. You have two toggles. You have an individual or a marketing report that you can make this screen. Now, the idea behind it is an individual presentation will have borrower information. It's going to have a first and last name. You're going to have your property address, basically the details of the transaction that are related to the borrower specifically. If you choose to make it a marketing report, it actually removes the last name and you get a report headline instead. So, is FHA right for you? Now, the good part about making something a marketing report is that it removes any borrower data from the presentation. So you'll have a report headline instead of a first and last name. And then under the contact area where we would normally have a property address, we still have it here, but it doesn't show up on the presentation. So the good part about this is when you send out a marketing presentation, you can send it out en masse. You don't have to worry about it being specific to a certain property because property address isn't going to show. So we'll go ahead and leave it as a marketing report for today. And then there's no home phone number because obviously I'm just going to kind of send this out to everybody. Matter of fact, when we get to the end of this, I'm going to show you how to post this on Facebook. So home phone, we're going to leave that blank. Client and prospect doesn't really matter for this case study because this is simply a marketing report. Now I am going to select own because I don't want to have to do a rent versus own report. If you do select rent in this first screen, you will be guided through a rent versus own report. Now you can choose the total cost analysis at the end, but some of you may have noticed as you're going through the wizard, if you choose rent, when you get to the analysis screen, that analysis screen is based on a rent versus own. So you don't have options like adjusting the benchmarks like you would with a total cost. So what I usually recommend is if you know you're not doing a rent versus own, always select own, even if they don't own a home, and I'll show you why. When you select own, your next screen is the goals selection. And you can actually select purchase a new home, which means that all of your new product options will be purchases. And this is going to result in a total cost analysis selection at the end. So let's go back to that first screen real quick. I do want to explain what the partner email and the friendly name are for because those are pretty important. Partner email. If you do choose to enter a partner email here, when you get to the end of the presentation, you'll have a checkbox that allows you to notify the partner when your presentation is viewed. So just like you get notified via email and via RateWatch alert, the partner will also get an email alert telling them that this presentation has been viewed, how long it's been viewed, and it's got a link to the presentation as well. Now, the good part about this is you're including the realtor partner in every part of the transaction. So obviously inclusion is great. They're going to love that. They're going to love being part of it, but it also gives them an idea of where you're at. How far are you in the process, and what are your educational points that you're delivering to the borrower? Because quite frankly, the realtor needs the same education as the borrower does in most cases. So it's really good to be able to pass your advice through all the channels at once. So I do highly recommend you go ahead and put a partner email in there if this was a partner referral or if you're working with a specific partner on this marketing presentation. And then when you get to the end, you're going to check the box to notify them. Now, I will qualify that with one statement. Always ask your borrower if they don't mind if you do that. It's two reasons behind this. One, you don't want to blindside them because if they find out the realtor's been watching the entire time and they weren't aware of it, they might actually not take too well to that. So the second reason is let them know ahead of time. It's all about transparency. There's a billion other loan officers out there that are trying to get their business, but when it comes down to it, you want to make sure that everything you deliver is crystal clear. There's no subterfuge. You're showing them all the numbers, you're showing them the long-term comparisons for this loan, but you also want to let them know that if you are including a partner in this, you'd like the partner to be part of that process through the entire thing, and ask them if they don't mind doing that. Of course, if they tell you yes, then have at it. Include your partners on there. And I can promise you, your partner will be impressed with that, one. And two, they'll be appreciative. They like being included in the process. Now let's talk about the friendly name. The friendly name field it's not a nickname for your borrower. It's actually a nickname for your report. And the reason this is important is if you do several presentations for one client or one partner, you need to be able to differentiate them so that when you come back into them, you know which one it is. I'll show you why this is important. If I'm at my home screen and this FHA program was not the last one I've done, meaning it's not in the list here, I can't just click on it to find it. The way I would need to find it is I need to go into the View All tab so I can see all of my client list. Now, when I go down to the Is FHA Right, let's see if I can find it. There we go. When you hit the little arrow next to it, you can see that it has a date and time stamp on it. But if you use a friendly name, it'll also include the friendly name right here. Now, this is very important if you're doing multiple properties for somebody. For instance, if I was doing two of them, I might put primary residence for this one, I might put investment property for another one, and they'll all pile in underneath this client. So when I click that arrow, I'll see them all together. Now, in order to create a new presentation under this client, instead of just starting with new client like you normally would, if you want to append a report to an existing client, all you do is come into your View All screen like I've done here, left click on the desired client, and you can hit Add Analysis. And this is actually going to add one beneath this client. So it'll be separated in here, and you'll see that your friendly names are going to be really important there to help you identify what report that is. So I'm going to go back into that analysis, and what I did is I simply left clicked on the Edge Strategies one, and I'm going to hit Open Analysis. Now, as I mentioned in the goal screen, I chose purchase a new home, and the reason I did is because I don't want to be asked questions about a current mortgage. I'm just doing purchase options here. If I choose any of the other goals, it is going to ask me about a current mortgage because it's going to assume that I want to do a refinance. So I've selected the purchase goal, and I'm going to hit the right arrow to continue. Now, there's only one field on this screen that is in red. That's the property value / purchase price. And the reason you would fill this in is it actually saves you a little bit of time as you're going forward in the products. When you fill in a property value or purchase price here, it'll automatically populate that purchase price into your new product slots. So when you come in there, it's just one less step of data entry. Now, the other fields that are in black here, these are really more refinance questions related to their current mortgage, which in this case, they don't have a current mortgage. So we're going to leave those alone and leave them completely empty. And we're going to go to the next screen where we can actually get to the affordability. Now, in a marketing presentation, you won't know this information because you're actually sending this out to a giant group of people, so you're not going to have specific borrower information. The one part that I would say you want to add is put a savings balance in there. And the reason you want to do this is because you want to show the client what happens to the money that's in their savings after the down payment. Now, in this case, I made sure that their savings balance was enough, at least for the down payment and closing costs. Now, when we get to our analysis screen, I'm going to show you in the reinvestment strategy why this is important. Now, the bottom section here, I did enter a tax bracket. And if you don't enter a tax bracket, what happens is your final presentation will not have a tax benefit on it. If you do enter a tax bracket, it automatically calculates tax benefit and includes it on your presentation. Now, for a marketing presentation, I would usually go ahead and choose a tax bracket, but always make sure if you're going to show tax benefit on your presentations, you want to put something in the payment notes that directs the client to the CPA or financial planner for more details on tax deduction. You don't want to represent yourself as an expert on taxes. Basically, you're showing them this to educate them on the potential tax benefit, but you don't know their individual tax filing status. There could be a number of things that would come into play. So I have entered this 25 bracket, so it is going to show me a tax benefit on the report. It's also going to show on the report the assumption of the 25% tax bracket. So when people click on the more info sections, they will see that assumption, and they can see what you've based this on. Now the next step, minimums and maximums. This is for the application process when you're initially taking an interview. But for a marketing report, you're not taking an interview. So don't worry about this. You're not collecting this data from anybody. You can actually bypass this screen and go to the next one. Now we get into our loan programs. And you can see there's my 30 fixed FHA. I've got my conventional 5% down. Now on the 30 fixed FHA, notice I use very short titles. The reason for this is you can fit pretty long titles on the browser-based version, but if you expect this to be printed, and you usually know your clients, you know which ones are going to have, you're going to end up printing it out. If you do expect it to be printed, keep this under 12 characters or less. That's going to ensure that if you have 4 products, it's all going to fit on the print job. If you keep them too long, what will happen is your last product might run out of view in print. So I would always recommend that when you prepare one of these, and I should have turned off my phone. Let me put that on D&D real quick. And that makes for an interesting concept. So just a reminder for everybody, when you are recording videos in Edge, don't make the mistake I just made. Put your phone on Do Not Disturb. Otherwise, you've got a ring in the middle of your video. It's particularly annoying, and you're probably going to have to re-record. So with that said, I'm now on Do Not Disturb, so we shouldn't have that interruption again. Now, I've finished naming the product. I've used acronyms, and I'm shortening this as much as I can so that it's just plain and simple. We don't want to put too much data on the product name. Now, the question, is this a refi? No, this is not a refi. This is going to be a purchase. Now, the current mortgage checkbox, this one is actually kind of interesting. This one you should actually never have to check. You never want to click on this to check it. The only time that this current mortgage checkbox should be checked is when you're resubordinating a second lien. And when you're doing that, you're actually going to copy the existing products from the assumptions area where you entered the current mortgages, and then you're just going to change the first lien to be a new refi. Second lien is going to stay as is, which means it's going to have this current mortgage checkbox. All right, so we've got another option here, add product from template. If you do have templates assigned, you can actually choose one of the templates that you have. If you don't, I'm going to show you how to create one in today's discussion. Now, this is an FHA loan, so I've chosen yes, this is an FHA loan. Now, you must choose that so that you get the upfront MIP category in the next screen. Now, the purchase price already filled in for me because I had entered it back in the assumptions area. But I did make sure to go ahead and enter my down payment in the form of a percentage. And you can toggle between percent and dollar amount using this button right here. So you can see I can jump over and enter it as dollars, or I can jump back and enter it as percentages. So I'll put in my 3.5% there. Now you want to make sure and pop in the interest rate that you can get and the term. Make sure to enter this in the form of months. If you put 30 there instead of 360, you're going to end up with a phenomenally high payment. So if you ever do get just a ridiculous payment in there, check your term because you might have entered it in years instead of months. This is a fixed loan, so I'll leave it at fixed. Now, if this did have an interest-only period, I'd want to tell Edge exactly how long the interest-only period is. So for instance, on a 10-year IO program, I would enter 120 here. That would indicate 120 months of interest-only payments. For today's discussion, though, on the 30-year FHA, we're not going to put an interest-only period. Now, balloon payment. This one is actually only used for second liens usually. There's some first liens where you'll have a balloon, but it's pretty rare. Balloon payment is for a loan let's say that you have a 30 due in 15, where it's a 30-year amortization, so the payment's based on a 30-year am, but it's actually due in 15 years. Now, for those cases, you would actually enter where that balloon payment starts. So that would be month 180 if you're doing a 30 due in 15. Now, I'm going to leave that one blank because this is not a balloon payment. And then we have a checkbox here for apply MCC credit. I'm not going to cover that one in detail today, but if you guys are wanting more information about the MCC credit, check our help menu here. Go up to help. It's going to open up our knowledge base and then do a search for MCC. And you can see that there's one here called how to use the new MCC tax credit. And this just basically tells you what it is and what it's used for. Now, beyond that, you also want to check and make sure that you're allowed to do the MCC tax credit. Each state has different guidelines for exactly how much of the interest can be written off, or actually credited, I should say. So you want to check with your lender to find out, one, if you can provide that program, and two, what the caps are for it. All right, so we'll get into our closing costs, and you can see that at the very bottom of the screen, we have this upfront MIP category, and that was triggered by choosing FHA equals yes. So I've popped in my 1.75%, and I'm going to go ahead and add that to the loan amount. Most times you're going to be able to finance this in. Now, some of you may have noticed I have a rather large contribution here, and the reason I do is initially when I created this report, I was actually going to have a seller credit cover the upfront MIP. So let me show you what I did first so you can see how that looks. So I put my 1.75% upfront MIP in there, but I didn't finance it into the loan. So I'm going to call for this at close. Now, to offset that, inside my closing cost detail, I have a contribution of $7,600. That's just enough to overcome that upfront MIP. And you can see that that's a seller paid contribution, and it is going against the APR because they're covering the upfront MIP. Now, for today's discussion, I'm going to assume the seller is not covering that. So I'm going to get rid of that contribution and hit apply to loan. Now I'm going to check the box to add this upfront MI to the loan amount. So this has increased my amount financed by the $7,600 here. Now we get to the end of the presentation, or the end of the product here. We need to make sure and specify our hazard insurance, our taxes, and our mortgage insurance. Now usually I do like to use factor percentages for these, so you want to figure out what your factor percentages are for your area. The easiest way to do that is run one of these presentations and compare it to what your LOS says for the hazard and taxes that are required. And you're going to keep moving this percentage until you get that dollar amount to match. And then you want to remember what that percentage is, because you're going to use that percentage going forward. So I've entered my hazard and taxes, and then I've got mortgage insurance. Now this is probably the most critical part of doing an FHA loan. Mortgage insurance on an FHA, as you all know, has to carry for the life of the loan. But you may not be aware that mortgage insurance on an FHA actually changes every single year. It basically recalculates every year based on the last 12 months average balance. In order to make that calculation happen on all FHA loans, or all government loans for that matter, you want to check the box Calc MI on balance. That's going to ensure that, one, your monthly mortgage insurance is correct, and two, you get that declining MI over time. If you don't do this, it's going to assume an MI payment of $484.95 for the entire term of the loan, which is not correct, and you're going to end up with a very high APR. So let's talk about the cutoffs. Now I've entered my 1.35%, and that's just, look at your guidelines. 1.35 is the percentage you would use for the high LTV FHA loans. If you're less than 90%, there's a couple of different factors that come into play. They actually only have to carry it for a minimum of 11 years, and then it can drop at the 78% mark. But if you guys would like to see the MI guideline sheet, I have a good cheat sheet for you. I can send that over to you. Just shoot us a note over at support@mortgagecoach.com, and we'll get it to you. Now, as I said, we did check the Calc MI on balance checkbox, so our MI payment is correct, but we also need to tell Edge that it has to go for the life of the loan. So I put my MI cutoff month here as 360. Now, just so you know why we have two different cutoffs, the MI cutoff month is the main operator. That's the minimum amount of months that the MI has to go. Now, it used to be that FHA loans had to carry a minimum of 5 years of MI. Then after that, if your loan to value was at 78%, the MI drops off. That's no longer the case. But the reason I bring that to your attention is if you're refinancing an existing FHA loan that was closed before June of last year, it falls into that old MI category where it only had to be carried for 5 years, then can drop. So if you're comparing a current mortgage, current FHA that was closed a while back, and then a new FHA, you're going to find that your new FHA carries MI longer. So you're going to have to get a pretty good rate on that one to overcome your existing mortgage. If you're doing a streamline, however, remember they can still use the existing MI guidelines. So check your guidelines there for streamlines because they can just basically pick up their MI where they left off. All right, so we finished our FHA product. Now I'm going to go into our conventional. And the easiest way to do one of these is after you've prepared one product, use the copy button. And I'm going to copy from this FHA program. Now, once you do that, it brings that same FHA program over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to toggle this box from FHA equals yes to no. Then I'm going to change my down payment percentage to 5%. And I'll put in the rate that I can get on this. And of course, it's already got the term because I copied it. And you'll notice that the copy button actually brings everything over. So we've got our APR costs, our points, everything has been copied over. If I did need to make any minor modifications to my costs, I can go back into the closing details here. Let's say my origination is a little bit less on this one. And once I apply that to the loan using the button down here at the bottom, it'll update my total APR costs here. Now, a question from Jenny Van, she says, I specialize in down payment assistance. Can Edge accommodate that presentation? Absolutely, Jenny. So let me show you how to do that. In your closing cost detail, what you're going to do is you're going to add a custom fee. You only need to do this once because once you add a custom fee, it's going to be in your list from there on out. So you hit add custom fee and you can call it down payment assistance. Now with these types of credits, you want to make sure that you check default prepaid. And the reason for this is we want to make sure that this doesn't offset your short-term savings. We want this to go against your down payment. We don't need it to go against APR costs. We don't need it to go against non-APR costs. We're going to put it in the prepaid section so that short-term savings completely ignores it. So we're going to hit OK. Now I've got a new fee called down payment assistance. And I'm going to make this a negative amount. So let's say it's $3,500 in down payment assistance. I'm going to do negative $3,500. And I'm going to leave it as borrower paid. Now the reason I'm doing this negative amount is going to be attributed to the borrower costs. So the cash to close at the end, we're going to subtract $3,500 out of it. Now the prepaid escrow box, I'll show you this when we get to the presentation, but if I had not checked this box, what happens in the short term area is that it actually subtracts this from the closing cost when we're looking at our total costs, and it produces an inflated savings that is not realistic. So for cases like this, when you're doing down payment assistance, use a custom fee if you've already created it. If you haven't created it yet, add a custom fee, call it what you need to, make it a negative amount, and make it borrower paid. Now, this is actually the same thing as if you just did a regular add fee and use the drop-down list, type a C in your drop-down, and scroll down just a tad. There's one in here called contribution. This is the only one in the list that actually has logic behind it that knows that whatever you put in this field, and you can leave it positive at this point, needs to be subtracted from the cash to close. This right here, this lender paid $3,500 credit, does exactly the same thing as this borrower paid negative $3,500. So I'm not going to apply both for this one, but the only reason you would do one or the other is the nomenclature on the fee name. So if you wanted to call it down payment assistance, you'd have to do it as a custom. If you don't mind what it's called, the functionality is exactly the same if you choose contribution. So Jenny, if that doesn't answer the question, let me know if you need more detail on that, and I'd be happy to cover it. All right, so let's get our down payment assistance out of there, and then I'll apply to loan. All right, excellent. Thank you for the follow-up, Jenny. Now, because I copied that FHA presentation, all my hazard and taxes and everything came over, but so did my MI. And the MI on a conventional is going to be different than what it is on your FHAs. So we need to make sure and apply the appropriate factor. In this case, it's probably about 0.9. We do want to have the 78% cutoff, but because this is not a government loan, we can uncheck the Calc MI on balance. And you can see that my MI payment actually changed. It's no longer based on an average anymore. It's just a straight payment of $320.62. Now we also need to remove the minimum amount of months. So I'm going to type a 0 here. What I've told Edge is that at this 0.9 factor, we're going to have an MI payment of $320.62, and that needs to carry until the loan to value reaches 78%. At that point, it drops off completely. Bob's question, he says, is MI ever tax deductible? Bob, last year it was, this year it is not. So they vote on this every single year. We've left it in there because we never know when it's going to change. It might be deductible next year, but currently it is not tax deductible. So I would leave this checkbox empty for now. Now I've got my 2 products in there. If I want to add an additional product, I can hit add another product. Maybe I want to show, I know what I can show you. Let's do a single premium MI buyout. So if you guys aren't aware of what a single premium MI buyout is, basically what you're asking for is you're asking for either the borrower, the seller, or even yourself, the lender, to make a contribution against basically a one-time premium for their MI. And what happens is when they do that, they don't have to pay monthly MI. And it's a very valuable program, especially when you're comparing against an FHA where they've got monthly MI that lasts for the life of the loan. So let's see how this is done. I'm going to call this one single premium. And then I'm going to copy that FHA loan. So I use the copy from button. I'm going to select the FHA and hit OK. Now for these, it's going to function actually as a conventional, but I'm going to leave it as FHA yes because I need that upfront MIP category. So I'll change my down payment percentage. I'll change my rate because this is a conventional. I'm going to get a slightly higher rate than I would on the FHA. Now if I needed to make any modifications to my fees, I'd go ahead and do that. In this case, I'm not going to. I need the upfront MIP category. This is going to be my single MI premium. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter the percentage. Now it's usually 2.25%, but if you guys know the guidelines, you know that you're not going to be able to exceed 97% on that conventional loan. So you can't finance all of it in. You can finance up to 2% in if you're doing a 5% down. So what I would do here is if I want the borrower to bring this in at close, I'm going to put my 2.25, but I'm not going to finance it in. That means that the borrower will need to bring in 9618 to close. Now, if I want somebody else to cover this, being the seller, a broker, or maybe I'm going to cover it using a rate credit, I would need to put a contribution in my closing cost detail that would cover this amount. So 9618.75. I will add a fee, select contribution, and then I'll put in my 96.85 or whatever it was here. Choose who's going to pay it. So if I wanted the seller to come in and pay for this single premium, I can hit apply to loan, and it was 96.18, so I need to go back in and change that. And once I apply that to the loan, basically what's happened is that credit has wiped out this upfront MIP, so it won't be called for at close. So now I've got the seller paying the single premium. Now, what's great about this is when you do it that way, you don't need to do monthly MI anymore. So you can zero this out. You can even zero out the caps if you'd like, or the cutoffs, I mean. But the end result, as you'll see, is a pretty staggering savings. Now that's a monthly savings. Obviously, when we get into the the short-term savings, the reason I wanted to show you this, why it has such a huge savings, is because on my contribution, I didn't earmark where that contribution is supposed to go. So I need to go back one screen here. And I'm going to go into my contribution, and I want it going against the prepaid escrows. So I'm going to hit apply to loan and hit the right arrow. Now, see how this column here, it was saying $30,000 in savings a moment ago? Not realistic. What's realistic is this $20,000 in savings, because when we look at the short-term interest, MI, and closing costs, we don't consider prepaid escrows. So if I mark it as a prepaid escrow contribution, it correctly assigns that amount to the right area, so it doesn't inflate our savings here in the short-term area. All right, so I know I went a little fast through that. So let me show you just the nuts and bolts of this single premium one more time. So what I did is I copied the FHA loan. I changed it to 5% down. I changed my rate accordingly. And then with the upfront MIP category, I put in the amount that they would need for that single premium buyout. I did not finance it into the loan because I want somebody else to cover it. Then I entered in the closing cost detail a contribution that was enough to cover that upfront MIP, and I marked it as a prepaid escrow. Now that results in no monthly MI, and it also results in a pretty significant savings over time. We've got not only a $526 savings per month here, but we're saving them 20 grand in interest and MI after they've already overcome their closing costs. That's important. I'm going to repeat that one more time. When you're explaining the short-term savings, this is not just the monthly savings multiplied by 60. Obviously, this wouldn't make sense. 205 by 60 is not 15,000. What this is showing is just the unrecoverable costs of the loan. These are the interest, MI, and closing costs. Now, this means that in order to show a savings on any of these given properties or any loan products here, these have to save enough interest and MI to overcome the closing cost difference. Now, between these programs, I actually have the same closing costs. So in this case, this is just interest and MI savings over time. Now, when you're doing a refi, this comes into play a little bit more because this helps you to isolate a break-even point. When you have a current mortgage, your new mortgages will not show a savings until they have saved enough interest in MI to overcome the closing costs that they're not paying on the current mortgage. So to find out where they break even on those closing costs, you're going to shift your analysis months until you see a savings on your new products. That's the point at which they've saved enough interest and MI to overcome those closing costs, which means everything going forward is interest and MI savings after they've broken even. I'll show you a refi in just a couple of minutes here so that we can isolate that in a little bit more detail. But let's continue on with our discussion on this topic. So we are showing total interest in MI paid for our long term, and you can see that there's a substantial difference between the three of these. Obviously, the FHA is going to be the most expensive across the board, but I've got a pretty significant savings that I can earmark to go somewhere. On the conventional, I'm saving them $205 a month. On the single premium, I'm saving them $526 a month. I need to put that somewhere. Otherwise, it's not considered for our savings. I need to either put it back into the principal of the loan or put it into an investment account or even their current savings account. To do that, I'm going to hit Adjust Reinvestment Strategy. Now, I've got a bunch of customization going on in this one, so let me get rid of some of these. And I'll show you what I mean. Let's wipe all these out, actually. And then I will show you how to customize in just a moment. So let's say we wanted to plug in that monthly savings here, going straight back into the principal of the mortgage every month. We want to recommend to our client that, if you're able to do this FHA mortgage, you're able to cover this 3323 payment. Why not get one of these other loans and use the extra money that you would have otherwise paid to go straight back into principal? Now what we can do is we know that there's 20517 savings. And we know that they have MI for 113 months on this particular loan. So they can make a payment of 20517 for 113 months. Then after that point, when the MI drops off, they have even more money that they can put in there. So how do we represent that inside Edge? If I was to just put 20517, this is going to say that I'm putting 20517 back into principal reduction until the loan is paid off. Now this is actually beyond the MI cutoff month, so I'm not accounting for the MI that I'm saving after that drops. So in order to do that, I'm going to double click on this cell here. And at month 1, I'm going to start with 20517. And this needs to go for, and you can see here, my MI actually drops off at 87. It's also shown right here, and that's as a result of that extra principal payment that I've been doing. But at month 87, I'm going to have an extra $320 that I can tack on top of that. So how do we represent that? We're going to add another line item. And this one's going to be month 88. And what I'm going to do is break out a calculator, and sorry, I'm on a new Mac. I don't necessarily have my calculator available right now, but we can calculate this out. So we got 525, roughly 525 total. So at month 88, I can start attributing 525 from there on out because I'm no longer responsible for that MI. So what this is telling me is that at month 1, we start at 205.17. It's going to continue doing that monthly until it hits month 88, at which point that principal contribution here goes to 525 and continues on until the loan is paid off. And we hit OK there. You can see that this has now changed our freedom point down to 19.7 years versus, the FHA, which we'd actually have a longer freedom point. And the only reason we have differing freedom points on these guys right now is because I've got additional customization going on. And that was because I customized this bottom area. Now, we're not going to discuss the investments for today's discussion. I actually should get rid of those. But I did want to show you that you can customize any of these fields. You can tell it exactly how long you want a payment to go for. You can indicate a lump sum payment if you'd like. And if you really want to see this in action, go back to our knowledge base, type in reinvestment. And then let's scroll down just a tad. This is the one that I would recommend you watch, How to Customize Your Reinvestment Strategies in Edge. This covers not only principal reductions, but investments and payments back to the current savings account. It'll show you how to do lump sums. It'll show you how to do reinvestment of MI after it drops off. All the stuff that we were just showing you, it goes into detail on. So check that one out when you get the chance. All right, so let's, I got to get rid of these. It's annoying. Bear with me for just a second. I had set up an ultra detailed report here, and it doesn't need to be that detailed. So this is how you get rid of customization, by the way, is you just double click on the column that's been customized and you start deleting line items until they're all gone. And that gets rid of your customization. There we go. Okay, so now we don't have any figures down there to make it confusing. So when we hit OK here, we're going to hit the right arrow. And again, we don't need a property address because this is a marketing report, so it really doesn't even need to be filled in. And then we're going to hit the right arrow, and we're going to select the total cost analysis. Now, because I am showing the tax benefit on this presentation, because I entered a tax bracket, I need to make sure and put some notes here. Now, not only are taxes and insurance included in the payment, but I would probably put something in here saying consult your CPA, or financial planner for more details on tax deduction. Just basically cover yourself on that. Then you're going to hit the right arrow, and this gives you an opportunity to change the verbiage that is included in the More Info section. So when you click on those little More Info tabs on the live report, it shows this verbiage along with some details about what that section is talking about. In this case, it does include taxes and insurance, so I'm actually just going to erase this part because I've already disclaimed that over in the payment notes. In the short-term section, I might actually want to put a little bit of color in here. I might want to talk about what this is. This section compares the total interest, MI, and closing costs between each loan. Then I'm going to hit my right arrow, and now I have an opportunity, if I want, to change what my metrics are here. So if I wanted to look at total net worth, I can do that. It's generally going to be about the same between these programs. Total principal paid, you can see that there's a little bit more principal paid on this conventional 5%, and that is, of course, because we had that principal reduction payment going forward. But total interest in MI paid is usually going to be the big kicker. Now, if I wanted to get really detailed on this report, I would want to do the same type of MI reinvestment on this single premium because he's not responsible for MI at all. And this one would actually end up being the lowest cost of all of them. So let's do that real quick. Let me go back to Adjust Reinvestment Strategy. And I've got 525.79 that I can apply, and I don't have to customize it because I'm never having MI that I need to account for. Now, once I do that, you can see that it automatically adjusted my freedom point down to 20.17 years. This is going to result in significantly less interest in MI paid over time. Now, I want to show you this part real quick. The savings balance, this 50 grand right here, is what I had entered back in the affordability section. Remember, I wanted to make sure that it was enough to cover the cash to close. So in this case, they only have $30,000 cash to close max here. I probably could have gotten away with putting 30 in that category, but never hurts to put a little bit more. Usually for that, I use a very low rate of return because this is going to be their current savings account where they're probably only getting a 0.5%, maybe even a 0.25% return on that. Um, but if you do want to show an investment account, you would actually show it down here instead. So if you're talking to a specific borrower and you know that they have a specific type of investment, you can put their investment balance, you can put the rate of return they're getting, and you can earmark their savings going back into that account instead of a principal reduction. Or maybe you want to break it up and do half and half. I can put $300 in this principal reduction and put $225 going into this investment every month. Now, for today's case study, the reason I wanted to show you this is because when Edge looks at that $50,000, it's going to subtract the cash to close out of it to give you a new adjusted savings start. That's going to continue growing at the rate that you specified back in assumptions, or affordability actually. And you can see that at the 30-year point, I've got almost $28,000 in that bank account. This is great for when you're working with financial planners, CPAs, because you can show them what happens on their current savings, which has a low rate of return, and then you can show them what an investment portfolio would look like through your financial planner. All right, so we won't go into too much detail there, but again, watch that customization of reinvestments to get a little bit more on how to operate those. So let's get back to where we were. We just finished looking at the long-term metrics, and now we're getting to the point where it's asking us how to deliver this. Now, by default, it chooses the email link, and the reason for this is there's really no reason to print or PDF these. The whole reason for the email link is that this is live and dynamic. So when you send somebody a link, they can open it on their iPad, they can open it on their iPhone, their Android device. They can open it in the browser window on their computer. The good part about it is that that link always reflects what the most current information is inside Edge. That's really important because if you were to prepare a report and send it to somebody as a PDF and you wanted to go back and change, any little thing, you'd have to send them another PDF. Or if you printed it, you'd have to print out another copy for them. Also, the PDF and the print copy, they don't have videos, which means that if somebody passes that around, your advice isn't following it. All they're seeing is the report. So what I would tell you is always choose the email link. Never choose print or PDF. If the borrower wants to print or PDF, they can do it from the browser. So if they click on that link, there are buttons down at the bottom right where they can actually print or PDF it. Now there's 3 checkboxes here that I do want to bring your attention to. One is notify me when the report is viewed. This, I would leave it on by default. And the reason is I want to get notified every time somebody views one of these reports because I want to know what kind of traction I'm getting, especially depending on where I'm putting it. Now, if I'm putting this on Facebook, I'm going to get a notification that it's viewed, but I will caution you, you're not going to know who's viewing it. There's no way to know who's viewing it because we don't collect things like IP information from the viewer. That would actually be viewed as invasive, and we get hit with a lot of spam problems. Our links wouldn't get through on the email anymore. So we make sure we don't do that. We don't collect any data about the borrower. We're simply starting a timer that says how long the report's been viewed, and then it fires you back an alert that says, okay, they viewed it for 1 minute and 35 seconds, and it was this particular presentation. So always leave that one checked so you can get notified. If you want to use the click to call feature, you can enable the call button here. Now this selection will only be open to check if you have click to call credits remaining in your account. By default, everybody has 3 credits to begin with, just so you can test it out and see what it's like. Once you run out of credits, you would have to purchase more to enable this again. And if you wanted to do that, you would have to go into your settings, go into click to call, and you can see that I've still got 3 credits remaining here. If I wanted to get more credits, I can click get more credits and I can trigger a charge. Now when I do that, it's going to ask me for my credit card information to do it. So for those of you who are on a site license, don't worry about it. If you were to get more credits, it's not going to ding your site license for it. It's going to actually ask you to pay for it. Now we sell these in buckets of 20 credits for $20. So if you run out of credits and you like using the feature, you can get more right here. So let's get back over to our client here. Now the last one, send Edge View Alert to partner. Now remember, I told you in the very beginning on that first screen, the reason we enter the partner address is because we want this checkbox to appear. It will not appear if you don't enter an email address for your partner back in that client screen. And again, especially when you're doing a marketing report and you're cross-selling your realtor partner, you want them to get notified on how often this is getting viewed as well. So I've checked the box there. And then very, very important, always got to put a quote date. If you don't put a quote date and you put rates out there, you can be held liable for those rates. So make sure anytime you publish something with rates, you tie a quote date to it. This just basically covers you so that whatever rates were available that day, if they're not available anymore, you can go back to that presentation and say, look, those were only available on 5/8. Today is 5/15, 5/14, whatever it is today. I don't know, but those rates aren't available anymore, and you can cite the fact that you quoted that rate on that date. And that actually leads into a great conversation that you can have with your borrower about market volatility. You can show them screenshots of the rate watch and show them what it's been doing lately, how, we've had some gains, we've had some losses, and that results in different pricing every day. In fact, it changes by the hour. So you can show them rate watch screenshots to let them know you're looking out for their best interests. And when you do quote a rate for them, you're going to continue to watch it and you're going to let them know, hey, rates are about to change right now. We need to lock this immediately. If you foresee or you hear from the expert commentary that things are going to take a major dive, you probably want to get it locked before it starts doing that. All right, so last step, we selected email link. We need to generate the link. So we're going to click generate link. And this is the link that you're going to send out to your borrower. For you brand new users, Edge does not send emails. We want the email to come from you so it doesn't hit spam filters. If we send it, it's going to hit a spam filter. I can guarantee it. I'm sure all of you have noticed that some of our emails even hit your spam filters until you allow it. So the whole point of this is you're going to actually copy that link. You're going to open up a brand new email and you're going to paste that link into your email and send it to your borrower. Of course, you want to put a little bit of color around what you're presenting. Let them know that the link below is for their personalized home options report, something like that. But this is what you're going to send them. Now, the last part is add a video to it, especially when you're putting something out for a marketing presentation. You're going to do is hit add audio video. This is going to open up a second screen, and you can see that this is just a preview of the presentation. Let me make sure I don't have another window open there. And on the preview of the presentation, you have the same ability as you do in Edge Live, meaning you can highlight and drop highlights. But when you're recording your video, it's not going to record when you highlight. It's just basically when your client actually opens the presentation, whatever you left highlighted is still going to be highlighted. It's not going to highlight in sequence during the video. The only thing the video is going to record is what comes through your webcam. So that's just audio and video that comes through that little portal on the webcam. Your mouse movements will not be recorded, just so you're aware. Now, let's go through the report real quick. Remember I told you that I was going to help you get a little bit more detail on how to explain this lower left quadrant? Here's how. When you go into your more info section, if we want to show exactly how this total cost down here at the bottom is being generated, if I'm showing my client this, I'm going to highlight that we start with interest and MI for each of these programs. We subtract out the tax benefit. Then we add closing and points. So 107 minus 30 plus 5 is where we're getting this 82,217. We then compare those numbers against each other, and that's what's giving us the total short-term savings. Remember, that's the savings on the unrecoverable costs between each loan. Now, when you're ready to do your video, you've got your highlighting in place. It looks the way you want it. You got your long-term metrics the way you expect them to be. All you need to do is if this is your first time setting up a video, right-click anywhere on your presentation and hit Settings. And then on the little recorder icon here, the video icon, you want to make sure that your appropriate webcam is selected. If you have multiples, there might be more than one in the list, so make sure you select the right one. Make sure your mic is selected as the correct one. I have a couple of mics on this one, so I've got to make sure that the mic that I want is being selected. Now, if you're working on a laptop, oftentimes on a laptop, you're going to have two mics on there. One's going to be called internal mic, which is what you would expect to choose. However, if there's one called microphone array, that's the one you want to choose. Now, the reason behind this is laptops actually have two drivers for the mics. So the microphone array is the one that's always going to work for you, because even if it's not the default mic on your computer, you don't have to worry about selecting it as such. You can actually just choose microphone array here in your Edge settings, and it will choose the appropriate one for you. Now the other boxes here on the left, not so important. You can actually leave the local storage exactly as is. It's not going to do a whole lot for your presentation one way or another. The privacy, you want to make sure to click allow and remember so it doesn't ask you constantly if it's allowed to use your camera. And then on the first tab, enable hardware acceleration. If your computer is newer than about, I'd say 7 or 8 years old, you definitely want this checked. If it's older than that, you need to get a new computer, one. But two, you probably want to uncheck this box, because what's going to happen is your video card isn't strong enough and you're going to end up with a weird skippy stream on your video. So if you do have an old dinosaur computer and you're finding that your video is just really choppy and horrible, try unchecking this box so it doesn't enable hardware acceleration. But for 99% of you out there, you're going to want to keep this box checked. Now, once you've got your video settings set up like I just did there, you only have to do it once, and it's in your browser from then on out. So all you need to do is come down and hit record message. And there we are. Hi, everybody. Good morning. And you can see that up at the top of my browser, I'm in Chrome right now, so you can see that it puts a little red light up at the top on the tab. That just indicates which tab has control over my webcam right now. But also note that there's a couple of things you want to keep in mind, and that's webcam placement. Keep your webcam a little bit higher than your head. And the reason I say that is you want to be looking up at your webcam. If you are looking down at your webcam, you are looking down at your client. So just keep this in mind. They're going to see exactly what you're seeing in the video box right now, which means if I was up here looking down at you, it looks a little bit strange. So make sure you've got it positioned so you're always looking up at the webcam. And probably the most critical component of the video here is keep eye contact with the camera. Look at it as if it's your client. You want to keep eye contact with them so that they don't lose focus on you. Now, what this means is that if you're forced to look around the screen to check out your report and figure out what's going on constantly, they're going to see the top of your head, just like you saw mine. And it detracts from your presentation. So quick bullet points. The easy way to keep your eye contact is take a little yellow sticky pad. You get one of these guys right here. Write out your bullet point list of what you want to discuss, and then stick it right behind your webcam. That way, you're always keeping eye contact to the webcam, you know what you're covering, and you can just speak to it normally. Now, obviously, remember I told you before, you want to turn off your phone, make sure your ringers aren't enabled. If you've got a large window behind you that has a lot of sunlight coming in, close your blinds. And the reason I say that is if there's a lot of light coming in behind you, it's going to wash you out and you're going to look really, really white and pale. So just for lighting, I would say close your blinds. Make sure you don't have a desk lamp right next to you, because that'll produce a glare on your face as well. But overhead light, you shouldn't have any problem. Just make sure there's not direct light right behind you. Now, beyond that, of course, turn off your email notifications. You don't want those popping up in the middle of a recording. Turn off Skype. If you're using AIM or any of the other instant messengers, kill those while you're doing recordings, because that can be incredibly distracting. Close your office door and make sure and advise the people around your office, hey, man, I'm going to go in and do some recording real quick. Don't bug me for about 5 minutes. Just real straight and simple, because you don't want to be bothered when you're doing this. Having to retake these things can get really frustrating. Now, the final thing I'm going to tell you about video recording is just be yourself. Don't worry about being a video expert. You don't have to be perfect. In fact, when you make little mistakes, it's okay. It humanizes you. You're just the guy that is trying to tell them about their loan. You're not the big bad originator with a stigma behind him, and you don't have to be perfect. It's okay to make little mistakes here and there. If you stutter a bit, or if you find you've lost your place or something, laugh at yourself. It's okay. It works. So with that said, when you're creating your videos, try and keep them at about 2 minutes. You don't want to go much over that. Now, Edge will allow you to record up to 5 minutes of video. I'll qualify that, 5 minutes or 20 megabytes of video. Now, if you have a super duper high def camera, it's going to hit that 20 megabyte point very quickly. Now, what that means is you might get cut off at 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So you want to do a couple of test runs with your device just to find out exactly how long you can record before you get cut off, and then observe that cutoff. So if you know it's 220, just make sure your videos stay under about 210, and you should be just fine. If you've got a nice cheapy like I do, honestly, I recommend the cheapy web cameras because they will give you a much smaller recording stream, which means it's going to flow better, and you're not going to run into that size limit cutoff. You can actually potentially take the full 5 minutes if you want. Remember, though, again, I don't recommend 5 minutes as it's just too much talking for a single video. General points on recording videos: start off by introducing yourself, introduce your practice, what you do, introduce your realtor partner. Make sure to cross sell them all the way through this video if there's a realtor partner involved in this or a financial planner. But you want to start off with, I'm this person, this is what I do. I'm contacting you because Joe Realtor has put me in contact. Beef him up a little bit. Joe's, the best realtor in the county, so I want to make sure you get the best advice possible to make your mortgage decision. Then briefly touch on the mortgage options that you're showing. You can see I'm showing an FHA loan. I'm showing a conventional 5% down. But the third product here is a single premium buyout. I'd really love to explain more about that to you. But as you can see from the graphs, there's savings all over the board from it. So call me immediately when you finish watching this presentation so that I can ensure you get all the education you need to make an educated mortgage decision. Doesn't have to be much. That was 40 seconds, and that's perfectly sufficient. When this gets passed around as a video, when you're posting it on Facebook, when you put it on LinkedIn, when you put it on your website, your blog, wherever, your video is automatically attached to the link. So it doesn't go away unless you choose to delete it, of course. Now, with that being said, as long as you have those key factors in your video and very cursory information and a strong call to action at the end, that is where you're going to get your referrals. That's where you're going to get the new people that are secondary decision makers in the process. And excuse me, my computer just went to sleep for a second. I guess I took too long. All right. So I know I'm off camera right now, but that's when you're going to get your secondary person that's in the decision making process to also see your educational advice. And maybe he passes it along to somebody else. Ideally, your realtor is going to be passing that around, especially if they're posting it to their own marketing pages. You're guaranteed then that video is going to follow it, which means you're collecting those leads, you're capturing the leads. If you don't have a video, people are going to look at the presentation and they're going to just kind of wonder what it's really showing. They may call you to try and figure it out, but if you don't have a general overview and a call to action on it, you're going to miss a lot of those. All right, so it is 10 o'clock right now. For those of you who need to jump, I totally understand that we only have an hour on this one, but I am going to cover how to post these to your Facebook page if you'd like to. So I'm going to hit generate link. And by the way, for those of you who need to leave, I am recording this. It will be available in our coaching call archive by the end of the day. So if you got a jet, I understand. So I'm going to copy this link just like I did before, and then I'm going to jump into Facebook. As a matter of fact, let me go through Firefox, just so I'm not using my personal Facebook page. Oops. And actually, I'll have to remember what in the world I used for that. Okay, looks like you guys get my personal page today. And all right. Shoot, forgot it. So as you guys can see, I have actually just transitioned to a brand new computer here. So some of my stuff is not saved yet. But, and somebody's actually, Pam's asking, what is the icon that looks like a stack of pancakes below? That is actually SQL Pro. That's a database management tool. So let me show you how to post here. Now, what you're going to do is on any new status, and you can do this on your fan page or your personal page, you're just literally going to paste the link in there. And what Facebook does is it actually creates this link for you. You can see it puts a preview up so that you can see what's going on. And it puts an edge icon there. Now, if you want to replace that icon, you can. You can actually just hit an X there. You can overwrite this text if you want to. So like your personalized edge presentation. And then you can personalize all elements of this. Now on your fan page, it's a little bit different. It's not going to let you personalize the text here, but what it does allow you to do is if you tie it to an image, meaning you use this image upload deal here. On a fan page, it looks a little bit different. You use the image upload, then it allows you to put whatever text you want. But what I do is after I've popped in the link, please click on the link below to view your mortgage options. And then now when I post this, here's what it looks like. So you can see I've posted that. If somebody were to click on this from my page, or this guy for that matter, it's going to take them over to my Edge presentation so that they can see that. Now, if you do this on a fan page, like I said, it's a little bit different. And let me see if I can. I don't have a fan page hooked up to this particular account, but there is actually a video in our knowledge base that I just put up not too long ago. And if you search Facebook, so this is the one I did a while, probably about a month ago. Facebook changed how you can do the sharing on fan pages versus the personal pages. Personal pages, you have a lot of latitude to change whatever you want, but the fan pages, you can't really edit the text or image directly from the share. So what I did is I created a video to show you specifically how to do this on a fan page. So you can edit the image, you can edit the text, and you can ensure that the links are correct so that when somebody clicks on it, it actually goes to where you expect it to go. Now, if you haven't created a Facebook fan pages, the whole reason behind them is like you saw, when I brought up my personal page here, that's my personal stuff. That's not something I want my clients seeing. Instead, I need to have a business presence on Facebook, which means I need to have a fan page. If you want to learn how to create a fan page, I've done a video tutorial for you that shows you exactly how to do it. And you can think of this as your business office on Facebook. You've got your home office, which is your private one, which is where all your friends are. It's where you share cat pictures. It's where you share jokes, and it's where the stuff that you really don't want your clients necessarily seeing is going to go. Whereas the Facebook fan page, this is where you share all your business elements. You share articles about what's going on in the mortgage industry right now. You share things like your Edge presentations. You share realtor listing links when they've given them to you. So if you don't have a Facebook fan page, check this one out. It's really easy to create one, and you can really customize them pretty well. Once you've got a fan page out there, you can actually access that fan page from your personal Facebook account. So that's the easiest way to do it. There's also another one here. It just shows basics on how to share your Edge presentation to Facebook. It's kind of what we just went over. But definitely check these out if you're interested in pursuing the social media side of it. Check these out because they're going to give you some good detail on what you can and can't do in Facebook land. Now, beyond that, remember, you can also post these to LinkedIn. You can post them to Twitter. Anywhere you can paste a link, you can post your Edge presentation. And in fact, I got reports from a couple of people recently that their realtor partners were actually posting their Edge links on the MLS listing in the notes section. And I read through all of, matter of fact, I looked on Zillow and I looked on the MLS, and there's nothing specifically saying that you can't post a link there as long as it's not a solicitation. So as long as you're not saying, hey, I need you to buy something right now, you should be okay. So with that said, if your realtor is posting it for you, they're certainly not soliciting. They're delivering an education just like you are. So as long as they add it to the notes section on the listing, they're okay. I don't believe they're allowed to put a link in the header, so you won't see it there, but they can put it in the property notes. All right, so with that said, I think we're about done today. I'm going to go ahead and call it for today. If you do have anything that you'd like addressed that we weren't able to cover in today's call and you'd like more detail about it, shoot us a note over at support, and I'll make sure it gets included in next week's call so that we can start off with that and keep going forward from there. But with that said, have a wonderful day, everyone. Take care, and let us know over in support if we can be of assistance in any way. Thank you.